The Calgary Board of Education is working to move the school for young and expecting moms from its current safe, secluded location to being jammed in with another high school in what is sure to be a dangerous and incredibly difficult situation for teen moms. Tune in for more. Hi folks, my name is Cam. I'm the host of the Pro-Life Guys podcast, a show dedicated to equipping you with the tools that you need to have compassionate and compelling conversations about abortion so that together we can change minds, save lives, and transform our culture. Thanks a ton for tuning in. Today's episode is going to be a really cool one. It's going to be a little less apologetics focused and a little bit more focused on a current news item here in Calgary, but that I think that the outcome is relevant for conversations about abortion. So often we are confronted with pregnancy situations, either theoretical or very real for some expecting moms and those who are concerned about them, pertaining to those who may be in high school and the impact that pregnancy may have on high school students. And Calgary is one of the really cool spots in Canada that has a high school program dedicated exclusively towards pregnant and new moms so they can complete their high school education in a safe, secure, harassment-free environment. And as my guest today, Jeff Park, a good friend of mine, will get into, not only have they found tremendous success with this program, with graduation rates of moms and success of children going forward, all that kind of thing. So we've got that, but we've got the Calgary Board of Education, the entity that oversees this school. It's been an independent, secure, safe facility for, I believe, close to 20 years now. I'm sure Jeff's going to get into the details on it. But this facility that they're looking to move away from its current independent, standalone setup to ramming it into another high school in one of the Calgary high schools here. And so I think it's really important for us to be aware of, because I think this is a really cool opportunity for us to reflect on and integrate into our conversations positive changes that can be made for those experiencing challenging pregnancies. So often in my conversations, I talk to people about how we need to be working towards society with the infrastructure to support people who are going through pregnancy, that it shouldn't need to be a choice between either you're a parent or you graduate high school, either you're a parent or you graduate university. I mean, we just went through 2 years of COVID where a huge number of high school students and university students were studying online. And I know that that's not optimal for most educational experiences. However, can't we take some lessons out of that and apply them towards how we can help facilitate pregnant or young moms, and dads for that matter as well, obviously, to be able to complete their diploma, complete their degrees, their post-secondary hopes and dreams and aspirations? How do we get this from a society in which it's an either or to one where you can have both and? This isn't a matter of having your cake and eating it. It's a matter of not being excluded from participating in so many facets of society simply because you have children. That the fact that you have children shouldn't prevent you from being able to pursue an education, shouldn't prevent you from being able to pursue a career, or at the very least hold your place in line as you bring your child to an appropriate age for you to be able to re-enter the workforce, whatever it may be. I know there's a wide array of opinions on whether or not we should be pushing moms back into the workforce. I don't think that we should be pushing moms either way. I don't think we should be pushing women either way. I don't think it needs to be a matter of you're not a successful woman unless you're a parent. You're not a successful woman unless you have a career, blah, blah, blah. I think that success can be evaluated in a tremendous number of different ways. All that to say, I think that today's conversation, I hope and pray, will lead towards an informed audience on what we could be advocating for, not only in Calgary and how you can get involved in Calgary to prevent this massive and really unfortunate change from happening, but also what you might be able to do in your home community, maybe with your alma mater, maybe with your post-secondary or even your secondary school. How can we facilitate changes that make pregnancy and parenting more manageable for people in different seasons of life? So without further ado, a little bit background on my guest, Jeff Park. He is the Executive Director of the Alberta Parents Union, an organization of Alberta parents advocating for the best possible education for Alberta students, whether that be public, separate, francophone, alternative, chapter, independent, or home education. I'm sure there's other ones that I missed in there, other forms of education, but those are kind of the core areas that he works on. He's committed to standing alongside parents and their children to advocate for an excellent, parent-led, and equitable education system which recognizes the importance and value of choice. Jeff has an extensive background working policy research, advocacy, political campaigning. He lives in Calgary with his wife and 4 children. Jeff is an absolute legend. I've known him almost since I moved to Calgary. He's been involved in so many different cool political campaigns. The guy knows how politics work, which is cool for a guy like me who does not understand how politics work and really relies on people like him to bring me up to speed so that I don't have to get my hands too muddy in the political realm. And a great friend of mine as well. He's done a lot of pro-life work with CCBR. He's a big supporter of our team here and really a leader in this realm as it pertains to Louise Dean High School and the challenges that it's going through right now. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Jeff Park, Executive Director of the Alberta Parents Union. All right, folks, Jeff Park. Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time to join me on the Pro-Life Guys podcast. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Good stuff. We have been bouncing back and forth on this topic for a long time. I apologize we haven't been able to have you on before this. But we're talking about the Louise Dean School for Young Moms and a bit of a crisis that's happening with the Calgary Board of Education trying to move the program from one facility to another. But I'd love if you could give the audience a little bit of a background on Louise Dean as a school, what services it offers, and why it's so essential to have a solid program with funding in a safe and secure location.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on to talk about this. So the Louise Dean Center provides what the educrats like to call wraparound services, which is to say everything that you might imagine from babysitting to new mom training to social supports of all kinds and mental health supports, medical supports for the new moms, all that in one location. And that's really helpful because a lot of these moms. So for the listeners, the Louise Dean School is only for teen moms that have become pregnant while still in high school, and so these supports are very important in that because a lot of them don't have transportation, a lot of them don't have maybe family support, and basically none of them have support from the father, from any of the girls I've talked to and any of the testimonies I've heard. The father's basically not in the picture pretty much universally. And so it's sort of an all-in wraparound services, and that's been very important because we used to have in this country about a 50% immediate dropout rate for girls that got pregnant while still in high school, and then the graduation rate was in the 20s. And so with this policy change that basically happened all across Canada in the 90s, when the teen pregnancy rate was quite a bit higher. With this policy change to having these schools in their own location, specialized schools for teen moms, in what they call sheltered programming in their own location, that policy decision has made a huge impact, and you and I would agree has saved lives. So now, in not having to feel like they have to choose between their child and their education, Louise Dean students have a 91.4% graduation rate, and that's compared to a 78% graduation rate among all students in Canada.
Yeah.
So this is an excellent program. You're taking a group of moms that about 45% of them would be considered high-risk teens themselves.
Yeah.
And they're going into this program and having children who are healthier than their peers and do better in school than their peers, the children of the. So it's breaking this cycle of all too often teen pregnancy and poverty and all these social ills that can come from this tragedy, and so it's breaking that cycle and setting up the next generation coming from these moms in the best possible chance they're going to get anywhere, and so that has been a huge policy win.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's something we talk about on the podcast all the time, about all the challenges facing young moms and how programs like this are often vital for helping them choose life for their children when they realize that it's not, like you mentioned, the alternative of either I keep the baby and I drop out of school and my career prospects are torched and the dad is out of the picture and all this kind of stuff, and really difficult kind of future plans, quality of life, whatever people are tempted to call them, versus facilitating their thriving themselves as moms, as young women who are moving through their education, setting themselves up for potentially post-secondary careers, whatever it may be.
Which, by the way, they also do at a higher rate than their peers. They attain graduate. They do graduate work at a higher rate than their peers as well. Anyway.
Exactly, to be able to set them up and set their kids up for success. Well, it's absolutely phenomenal. And yet, this year, and you've been following this since it really broke, and one of the only voices following this since it broke, Calgary Board of Education trying to pivot away from that isolated, independent facility where these moms are able to gain that education, that stability, that parenting mentorship, I'm sure as well, that they can get in a safe and secure environment where they're not getting pressured or bullied from the people around them. It's frankly disturbing, some of the things that I have heard doing outreach at other high schools when they're talking about the attendees at Louise Dean School and the commentary about their habits and behaviors and all that kind of stuff. Ironically, the number of people who tell us, oh, you should be doing your outreach at Louise Dean School rather than here. I mean, okay, well, all of the attendees at that school have chosen life for their children, which is a bit ironic, but that's water under the bridge. This has been a bit of an ongoing thing that has reared its head again this year, about Calgary Board of Education trying to change the setup of this program. And you've obviously been a leader in tracking and responding to this. Bring us up to speed on what the Calgary Board of Education has been trying to do, not only this year, but in the years leading up to here, and why it significantly compromises the ability of the facilitators, the teachers, the social workers, whomever's involved in this ministry, in this program right now, severely impacts their ability to provide a safe, stable, and thriving environment to these young moms.
Exactly, and you're right. This isn't new this year. Unfortunately, the Calgary Board of Education has been trying this with this program for a while. They had moved this program into the Ernest Manning High School, and the girls who went there said that it was a nightmare, that it was violent, it was scary. You had just the regular problem of teenage boys saying what you've, I'm sure, heard teenage boys say in your outreach, and you do a lot of outreach in a lot of the neighborhoods that these girls come from, and that's one of the reasons that they say that this isolated programming is essential for them. Is they say, yes, we do come from these neighborhoods, and our bulliers and harassers go to these schools, and we don't want to go back into these schools. Unfortunately, the Calgary Board of Education has been passing this off as if the reduced drive time, the reduced transportation time to get to a school closer to where they live, that's some sort of a benefit. And the girls are saying it's quite the opposite. That this is in West Hillhurst, a neighborhood in Calgary that is significantly safer, significantly sheltered from the neighborhoods that they grow up in, is an essential selling point of the program for a lot of them. But so the Calgary Board of Education has been trying to do this for a while. But February of this year, they started this process to try to move it into Jack James High School. And they say that they're saying that it's because with the teen pregnancy rate falling, which we can all rejoice over, especially it's not falling because of an increased abortion rate among teens. It's falling because of a decreased pregnancy rate among teens, which is fantastic. But so that policy victory, that good news story, the Calgary Board of Education is seeing as a threat for this program, because now there are only 46 students in this program, which again is a great thing. In any other context, the Calgary Board of Education is going to be saying that the class sizes are too big. We need smaller class sizes, smaller programs. We need to be able to, but in this situation where they have that, where they can provide the most targeted kind of programming because they have a smaller set of students and potentially the most vulnerable students they have in their system. They're saying reduced teen pregnancy rate as if it's a bad thing, and are wanting. So they're saying that the issue then is that the province set standards for utilization rates. That the province wants you to have an 85% utilization rate of your facilities, and that does not mean 85% of the kids you could possibly cram into the building. A lot of people. It's a formula based on okay, if at 100% would we feel good about you're actually using all the rooms, all the facilities you have here, and so they say they're moving Louisiana because it's below 85%. When the Calgary Board of Education has 46 schools below 70% utilization rate, and none of them are they moving so rapidly to try to close as they are with Louise Dean. And so we asked the question, why couldn't you take one of your 46 failing schools and move one of those into a school that also isn't 100% utilized, and whatever the smaller building is, let the Louise Dean program have that building, and it would likely be cheaper than all the renovations that they're trying to do now because of the safety concerns at Jack James. They're sort of reacting after all the pressure that our supporters and many others were able to bring to create a separate entrance and key card entry and to sort of shelter it off as the best they can. But still, if a mom wants to use the gym, use the library, if they
well, I mean, even the same bus routes and whatnot, and spending time at the bus stops, and then they're probably going to be on the same bus. So, like, my brain works through by way of analogy, and, and you think about any other vulnerable student population, and if it was children with disabilities, we're saying, no, we don't have enough kids with disabilities anymore, therefore we're going to ram them into this school where there has clearly been problems with bullying children with disabilities. That'd be absolutely asinine to think that would be the solution to the problem of, we'll just make sure that the wheelchair entrance is only on one side of the building and surely they won't bump into anybody else using the same facility. That's a bit bonkers to think of. And so if that's the scenario, which is an alarming scenario, that these parents, like you said, many of the most vulnerable students within the entire board are going to be in for those not in Calgary, Jack James, this isn't to paint with too broad of strokes, unfortunately, but Jack James being in a much different neighborhood than the current Louise Dean School being in West Hillhurst is in one of the just north of downtown. It's a very well-to-do neighborhood. There's a lot of good protections and very safe and very few incidents of violence and whatnot. Moving towards Jack James, where this isn't to paint everybody as a violent criminal or whatever at Jack James, but rather just statistically, there's far more incidents happening at the school and in the neighborhood than there are in the current location. And so I'm sure a lot of people have been asking the question, like, what is motivating Calgary Board of Education to move this direction? I know you've touched on a few of the motivating factors already, but what else would push somebody to move in this direction of taking these girls from a very, very well reviewed, very safe, very secure, very ideal location for a lot of them to this far less than ideal scenario? Because I'm sure that it's more than just a single factor. I'm sure there's multiple factors contributing towards this proposal that unfortunately has already been passed by their own council, and as we're going to get into what we're responding to now to try to kind of push back against this decision. What motivated this?
Yeah, so I would say that in essence it's that the Calgary Board of Education does not do small well. They do empire building. They do big. So I think it mostly just falls outside their calculations. You know, the common sense that most of us would apply to something like this sort of just falls outside their calculations, the way they think about their own programming, and that was seen when at the 5-hour board meeting where this was decided. They had a 5-hour board meeting exactly 2 weeks after a stabbing had occurred, where a 13-year-old was able to enter into Jack James and stab another student. It was exactly 2 weeks after that had happened. Met for 5 hours. That didn't come up once. And when they asked administration, how did you decide on this school? The trustees were very honest about that. Administration had not told them what other schools they considered, why other schools were rejected, anything like that. Administration hadn't walked them through the thought process, hadn't given them much of a window into how this decision was arrived at. But administration was willing to give them the criteria that they used to make the decision, and it was space, ability to add more programs, and of course costs were the considerations they took into account. So safety is never even mentioned in their calculations. So of course it's it's like your classic sci-fi novel where the edubots wipe out humanity because you didn't program them to not wipe out humanity. You forgot to mention that part. Of course, if you don't consider it, then that's not going to come into play. And a trustee did ask them what sort of questions, if people had raised any questions about Calgary Transit, because a lot of the girls aren't going to be on one of these bus routes because they live all over. They live in Airdrie, Chestermere, outside, for those not in Calgary, those are bedroom communities outside of Calgary, or well, quite large, but towns unto themselves that have their own unique value, of course, but they're very close to the city of Calgary, and so these girls live not even necessarily in the footprint of the Calgary Board of Education, all of them, and so so they were asking, okay, so has anyone raised any issues with Calgary Transit? And the educrats start going on about bus timetables and stuff like that, and how they're working with their partners at Calgary Transit and all that. Well, I know because people CC'd me on their emails that they were sending. I know people raised one major issue about Calgary Transit, which is that the C-train stop that these girls would have to use to get there has been the location of, just in the 2 weeks before they had the meeting, a woman had been chased off the train platform with a hatchet. There had been this bizarre spaghetti western style showdown with a knife, a pipe, and a flare gun at this C-train stop. And it's the for those who are in Calgary, it's the Marlborough C-train stop. It's notoriously dangerous for people who live in Calgary, and actually, I've talked to people who live in Marlborough who say that it unjustifiably gives the neighborhood of Marlborough itself an unjust reputation for being violent, when it's really the C-train stop primarily. And so they didn't take into account student safety. It didn't figure into their calculations at all. They are considering things like space utilization. In this case, not in those 46 other cases, but in this case, they're willing to consider things like space utilization. They're wanting to take costs into account, making sure that they're not drawing down their capital reserves, which they mentioned in this 5-hour meeting. They mentioned their frustration with us because we were the only ones pointing this out. So I know it was us, and they were using the number that we used, saying that they had $40 million in capital reserves. This is money that they were given for capital funds from the province that they can only use for capital projects, which is to say, building new schools, refurbishing old schools, right? Like renovating old schools. That's repairs. That's the only thing it can be used for. So they have a study that says it would cost $17 million to repair the Kensington School, the building that the Louisine program is in, which to me only raises the question of why were these most vulnerable students allowed to have this building crumble around them to the point that it would take $17 million to repair. So I'm willing to take that number at face value. It doesn't, to me, help the Calgary Board of Education's case at all. But we were saying that they had these $40 million in capital reserves. They were very upset that we had said that. So they asked administration, could you talk about our real reserve levels and what and what we actually have available to us for things like this? And they had a financial update earlier in the same meeting. So they said, well, as the piece of paper you all voted on earlier in this meeting says, you have $49.88 million in reserves. So they had been projecting that their reserves would be going down when they made this decision. It was part of what they were saying was that we're spending down our reserves. We aren't going to be able to do this $17 million outlay. Again, we weren't necessarily asking them to do the $17 million outlay. Find another place, it's fine, but find a place by itself for this program to be by itself. And so, but they said we're going to be spending down our reserves. We aren't going to be able to afford it. Well, instead of going down, their reserves have gone up by almost $10 million in less than a year. So $49.88 million, almost $50 million in reserves. And so, of course, administration was trying to save face for the trustees a little and was talking about, well, if we work on all these other priorities that you guys have as a board, and if we start greening up the schools and do all our deferred maintenance on all of our schools, including the ones that basically no students attend, if we were to do all, then you'd only have about $10 or $15 million to play with. Oh, really?
So even if you do everything that you want to do, we still have $10 to $15 million.
Yes.
So like if we prioritize everything above these vulnerable moms, right, then we still have money to work with. And then obviously the natural question being, but should we be prioritizing all of these other things and greening up our schools and whatnot? Not to say they shouldn't be done ever, but should they be elevated above the safety and security of these moms who again, track record has shown, have been victims of bullying and harassment and violence. When not in these schools, as you mentioned, while they're stationed or expanding. And I'm sure many of the moms are, it's not like there's an immediate decision to go into Louise Dean School. I'm sure that many of them thought about sticking in the school that they have been attending before and thought they could get there, but then the pressures and the bullying and harassment and whatever else caused them to say, no, mom, no, dad, I need to swap over because this is not healthy, and I don't know if I can handle the pressures that are coming in with this kid. I got to make a change. And so it speaks to the massive problems there that unfortunately often happens at those high level decisions, right? That it's dollars and cents, or under the pretense of dollars and cents, and not the best interest of the students, as it were. And I'm sure there's a lot more that we could say about the Alberta Teachers Association or Union or whatever, but we won't get into all of that in this episode. Maybe let's start moving towards what do we do now? Because I wish we could have gotten this episode done before the board voted on this, but there's still hope, right?
I'm not sure it would have mattered because I think all the feedback they got, and over 5,000, almost 5,000 people signed our petition before the meeting, and over 400 people gave feedback, and it seemed to me, and so this is subjective. I try to stick to hard facts as much as I can. This is subjective, but it seemed to me that all that feedback only made them want to double down. That they were offended that people would suggest that they weren't taking safety into account when they're admitting that it wasn't part of their considerations. They're offended that people would say that a school that a stabbing occurred in isn't safe. They're offended that people would say that they've got $40 million in reserves, because we'll have you know they have $49.88 million in reserves. Is that I think they were just strengthened in their resolve to make this decision. Six of the seven. One I think I did not think she was the one who voted our way. Dana Downey, and all credit to her, the one who voted not to relocate Louise Dean, was not the person I would have predicted if we were going to get 6-1. But I think the pressure was significant, and she listened to it. But for the other 6, I think it wouldn't have mattered, because any pressure that we could have generated from doing this ahead of time, I think would have just added to their resolve not to do it. But sorry, you were starting to ask a question.
I was asking of where we're at now. Yes. I think that Alberta's in something of a unique situation, because we have the open door towards charter schools and other ways of going about addressing this problem. That it's not simply a done deal that they're going into Jack James, we're never going to hear from them again. 5 years from now, there's going to be no parents in there because of XYZ reasons. There is actually recourse that people can get involved with that might still be able to save this program from being rammed into the back door of another school, but rather, like you agreed upon, and this isn't necessarily a matter of keeping them in West Hillhurst, but rather having an independent facility for them. What avenues are you exploring now to try to maintain this separation, isolation for the flourishing of these students?
Absolutely. So we have relaunched our campaign and are now directing it to Save Louise Dean, and we are now directing it to the Minister of Education, Adriana LaGrange, and to the province to invite another school authority to step in and take over this program, because the Calgary Board of Education has shown that they don't have the desire to run this program the way every policymaker, aside from the ones they're paying apparently, every policymaker agrees that this is the way it should be run. We even got a shout out from the floor of the House of Commons from a member of Parliament that I think has come up on your show, Arnold Bierson, and Stephanie Kuzi asked Arnold Bierson a question about this. So even in the House of Commons, it's come to their attention. There's broad agreement that you need this sheltered programming, that it's very important for these girls, and the Calgary Board of Education is not interested in providing it. So we're asking the province to invite other school authorities to basically make an offer. The funding isn't going to change. The funding is decided on by a provincial formula, about $10,300 per student per year, and it's a little more because of the, maybe more than a little more. There's a bump because of the unique needs of the moms in this situation, where there's going to be extra funding to that. The main issue, from everything I was able to see from the Calgary Board of Education, had nothing to do with the funding. It had to do with the facilities. So if there were another education authority, another school authority that had facilities available to try to provide this kind of sheltered programming, then we're asking the province to open that up for another school authority to step in, because these moms should never be put in the situation where they're having to choose between their child and their education. That the kind of bullying and harassment that they might have to endure on their way to school, in school, is just, whether it's intolerable, even if it weren't intolerable to us, and it is, it's intolerable to them, which is why they prefer to drop out in all too many of these situations. And so we're calling on the province to take this out of the Calgary Board of Education's hands. They've shown that they're not willing to run this program the way it needs to be run, and as you indicated, you're right that this program will just die on the vine in the situation that they've provided, and most likely, because this kind of programming is still needed, an independent school or something like that would, because in Alberta we have a lot of education freedom and we have a lot of options in this way, it is most likely that an independent school or something, some other kind of independent programming would pop up to take the place of this programming for the individual moms in this situation. So let's skip the middleman. Let's not go through the part where the moms drop out for a couple of years, for a year or whatever first. Let's just let another program step in and take over, and have the province facilitate that. That's what we're calling on now, and we've gotten some early indications that the province may even be open to that. So we need to make sure that Adriana LaGrange and that our new Premier Danielle Smith hear from us on this, that this is important to us, and of course AlbertaParentsUnion.ca, go to the action tab and sign the petition, letting them know.
Beauty, and all that info can be in the description down below for the podcast, for you to be able to connect with the Alberta Parents Union with Jeff, and contact information for MLAs that are relevant to Danielle Smith, the Premier of Alberta at the time, and Adriana as well, the education leader right now. So that's super encouraging that there's an openness there potentially, and whether that gets moved into, I mean, I don't know what the likelihood of it getting moved into the Calgary Catholic School Board or Christ the Redeemer or something like that, or even if it's an entirely independent entity that ends up tailoring a lot of services towards this. I think that there's a tremendous value to a more specialized approach, because as we've talked about for the last half hour or so, clearly CBE is not invested in providing the best opportunity possible for these students. And I get that money is a thing, and you can't necessarily, we're not going to build palaces for every one of these students per se, but with the current allocation, with the opportunities that we have with reserve funds, with a lot of this on the go, you'd think that this would be a shining star that they would want to highlight within their school board, of like, look how well we take care, as you mentioned, the graduation rates, going on to post-secondary. You'd think that would be something that they would want to prioritize, and you really hope they don't need to get 5 years of terrible results at Jack James before they're willing to acknowledge that maybe this was a mistake and that they should have pursued another option. Hopefully we can find another entity that can take this on so that it's the moms don't suffer, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, right? The moms and their kids. And if they're suffering, then obviously we don't want that. We don't want the kids to be suffering. We don't want moms who are pregnant and contemplating, well, I don't want to go all the way to Jack James where I'm in an entirely different environment and I'm worried about all of those things. Maybe I'll just have the abortion. Maybe I'm not going to be that teen mom who gets bullied and I read this headline in the news and blah, blah, blah. Hopefully we can avoid all of that. Hopefully the province will see the wisdom in maintaining the integrity of this program, and hopefully we make a really good thing happen here. And so, Jeff, thanks a ton for coming on and for sharing everything that we need to know about this situation. And I hope that many of you, our listeners, will be able to plug in with Jeff and the Alberta Parents Union for putting some pressure and some guidance towards the province to be able to bring this into a much better and safer and more secure isolated location. So thanks a ton, Jeff, and I hope that we're able to get a good update in the coming months and maybe even sooner.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Jeff Park, Executive Director of the Alberta Parents Union. All right, folks, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Jeff Park, Executive Director of the Alberta Parents Union. So many nuggets in there that I take away from it, not only as pertains to the really unfortunate situation that's happening here in Calgary and the pressure that we want to put on the Alberta government now to get Louise Dean High School for pregnant and new moms out of this situation, ramming it into Jack James High School, where, as Jeff mentioned, like literally there was a stabbing not too long ago, and where bullying and harassment is unfortunately sure to happen towards these moms. Not only the pressure that we can put on the government of Alberta to make sure that these moms are still protected and secure in their facility, but also just opening up a greater conversation regarding the struggles that pregnant moms in high school might endure. Right? That so often we encounter moms at high schools or who are recently graduated from high school who it sends shivers up their spines to think about the idea of going through pregnancy while in high school, and that abortion is the only solution for them. I think this really cracks open the difficulty that many of these moms face and the urgent need that there is for safe, secure, independent facilities that allow for these moms to continue their education. Like I mentioned off the top, this shouldn't be an either or, this should be a both, and you should be able to be both a parent and complete your education. We're getting so much better at online learning and one-on-one teaching and all that kind of stuff that should be made available to these moms so they don't have to choose between killing their child and an education. It's absolutely absurd. And so I hope that it can be a valuable takeaway for you. And I hope that whether you're in high school, whether you're a graduate from a high school and still living in that community, wherever you may be, that you might be able to help your local high school build in some of these safeguards and ideas and concepts to be able to better facilitate the completing of education for moms who are experiencing pregnancy and those who have children on the outside of the womb as well, whether it's during pregnancy in the last year of school or whether they become pregnant in grade 10 or 11 or something like that, and they have that child, they're able to complete their education because of very safe and very well thought out safeguards and checks and balances and all that kind of thing. And so I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please do subscribe on whatever your podcatcher is. If you're tuning in on YouTube, we're over the 500 YouTube subscriber mark. I'd love to hit 1,000 this year. And so if you'd help us hit that goal, that'd be absolutely phenomenal. Shout out to my great friend and the producer of the show, Matty Halleck. He doesn't get enough appreciation and thanks and gratitude for all the work that he does to make the show sound and look great. No giveaway this week on our website mailing list, but there's going to be some sweet giveaways coming up in the not too distant future. Okay. And so tune into that. We did a giveaway last week. We're going to be doing giveaways in most of the upcoming weeks as well, but they're only there for those who are on the mailing list. And so go to www.prolifeguys.com, sign up for the mailing list there, and you'll get sometimes exclusive content, sometimes offers to CCPR run events, you'll get access to these contests that we're running for copies of books and signed other things, t-shirts like we had this past week, and so many other things. And so sign up on the website, prolifeguys.com, to be a part of the mailing list. You get all these extra perks that go along with it. So thanks a ton. I hope that you have a great rest of your day wherever you're at, however many hours are left in it, and may God bless you abundantly.